At this point, only the second book in the series, the Animorphs don't exactly have an awful lot of leads on how they're supposed to infiltrate, let alone fight against the Yeerk invasion of the planet Earth. But they do know that their vice principal, Mr. Chapman, is a human controller. So they're following pretty much the one and only lead they have. And Rachel is friends with Mr. Chapman's daughter, Melissa, but neither Rachel nor Melissa are doing super well in mental health terms at the moment. Rachel has been struggling with night sweats and nightmares and, generally not sleeping well for some reason these last few weeks. And Melissa seems sad, often has red puffy eyes like she's been crying and seems very withdrawn, is pushing friends away. And so conventional friendship means of gathering information have not been working well for Rachel. So the Animorphs are going to use that nifty morphing power they've been given to try to infiltrate the Chapman family home as the Chapman family cat, Fluffer's McKitty. Pictured here. Sorry, I just want to change that a little bit. Okay. What I think you may have missed most last week was the acquiring of Fluffer, because I think this was already plan B. Like, they were hoping Rachel would be able to speak to Melissa. That didn't go well. So plan B was acquiring the family cat, and that didn't go so well either. So they had to Tobias had to catch a shrew and deliver it to Rachel so that Rachel could morph the shrew to lure Fluffer McKitty, where Jake and Marco could grab the cat and stuff it into a cat carrier so that Rachel would be able to acquire the cat's DNA and then morph it without the actual Fluffer's McKitty also being, in the house at the same time, which would be a bit of a dead giveaway for Yeerks that there might be Andalites present. Yeah. And I don't know what else you missed. Marco is a bit of a dick, but, in the way that I think a lot of 13-year-old boys who pride themselves on being the funny guy are dicks, and, hopefully he'll outgrow it. Yeah. Did I miss anything important, Matt? Okay, so where we left off, Rachel has just morphed into Fluffer. Chapter 11. I was ready to fight. I was pumped. Kill or be killed. It is so cool when you feel the razor-sharp claws sliding out of your delicate-looking pink pads. Rachel, take a pill, girl. It's just Tobias, Cassie said soothingly. Tobias, I think maybe you better stay away, she called up to the sky. Cats are genetically programmed to be afraid of large birds. She was right. The shadow of Tobias scared me pretty good. It was strange, because it was a fear I shared with the shrew. But it was a different type of fear than the shrew's. This was more like I was angry, too. Only that wasn't quite it either. I guess it wasn't a real emotion at all. Basically, when I'd hissed, I was just trying to communicate. And the message I was trying to communicate was, don't mess with me. You may be bigger than me, you may scare me, you may even make me run away. But if I have to, I am ready to fight. That was my whole cat message to the world. Don't mess with me. Don't get in my way. Don't try to touch me if I don't want to be touched. Don't try to keep me from getting what I want. I was self-contained. I was complete. I didn't need anything but myself. It seemed lonely to the human side of myself, but at the same time, it was all very calm somehow. I'm okay, I said. I think I'm pretty much in control. What's it like? Cassie asked. It's like, you know those old cowboy movies with Clint Eastwood? He's a gunslinger and he walks into the saloon and everyone kind of gets out of his way. And now he's not really looking for trouble, but you better not make trouble. You don't want to make him mad. That's what it's like. It's like I'm Clint Eastwood. Can you do this, do you think? Jake asked me. Oh, yeah, I can do anything. Hmm. Don't let the cat's arrogance get you in trouble, Marco advised. Keep a little of your good old human fear. He paused. Oh, I forgot. Mighty Rachel doesn't have any good old human fear. So here's what you do. Borrow some of my good old human fear. I have plenty to spare. He's right, Rachel, Cassie agreed. Keep focused. Between between your own natural attitude and the cat's tude, you could get cocky. I cast a glance back toward the mouse. He had broken into that nut at last. I could kill him. I was sure of that. He was a plump little mouse, and I would catch him easily. But I wasn't hungry, so he'd get to live a while longer. No problem, I said. We're here if you get into a mess, Cassie reassured me. I'll meow if I need help. Don't worry, I'm in control now. It'll be fine. But the truth is, I was lying, just a little. See, I wasn't completely in control of the cat. For some reason, I didn't want to completely control the cat. I kind of liked his arrogance. It made me feel more sure of myself. And despite what the others thought of me, I needed all the confidence I could get. The morph clock is ticking, Cassie. It's 8:15. Remember that. I headed at an easy trot down the sidewalk toward the Chapman house. As soon as I started moving, I thought, oh man, if I could just keep some of this for my next gymnastics class. Pardon me. It was like grace beyond any grace you could imagine as a human. I passed a wooden fence. There was a railing up high, maybe 3 feet up. I looked up at it, and then, before I could even think about it, I leapt. My powerful hind legs coiled up and released. I sailed through the air, 3 feet straight up, and I was an animal that stood only about 12 or 13 inches tall. It was the same as a human being just leaping to the top of a 2-story building. And it was totally just nothing. It was just automatic. I wanted to jump, so I did. I wanted to stick the landing on a narrow 2-inch wide rail, and of course, no problem. Compared to a cat, the best gymnast who ever lived is like a big staggering cow or something. Rachel, what exactly are you doing? Jake asked. They were all standing there looking at me. I had totally forgotten they were still around. Just practicing, I said. I jumped back down to the grass. Okay, get the job done first, I ordered myself sternly. You can worry about the Kitty Olympics later. I started again toward the house, but this time something forced me to stop. It was a telephone pole. The spell. Pardon me 1 second. But this time, something forced me to stop. It was a telephone pole. The smell that emanated from it was overpowering. I went to it. I sniffed it again and again in short snort spurts of air. Short snort spurts. The air was trapped by a series of chambers above my palate. It would be held there even while I went on breathing. That way, I could get every possible bit of information from that smell. It was definitely a Tom's scent. A tomcat had marked this pole by peeing on it. He was a dominant cat, very dominant. His smell made me nervous. Not afraid, just a little less arrogant than I had been. If this cat appeared, I would have to submit. I would have to make myself smaller and less threatening and accept his dominance. Or I could fight him and get my butt kicked. It was just the way things were. It was all there in the smell of his urine, where any cat could read it. I resumed trotting toward the Chapman home. Rachel, are you sure you're in control? Tobias's voice was in my head. Why did you stop to sniff that pole? I figure I should look like a real cat, I said. I was just playing the part. If you say so, he said doubtfully. Just remember, it's fun being an animal for a while, not so fun when it's permanent. The 2-hour clock is ticking. That got my attention. It was like a dash of cold water in my face. I focused my human mind and took greater control over the cat's mind, but it wasn't easy. The cat's mind didn't even understand the notion of obeying. So I used something the cat would respond to. I conjured up the memory of the Big Tom smell. That triggered the cat's submissiveness. I that triggered sorry. I conjured up the memory of the Big Tom smell. That triggered the cat's submissiveness. I felt my part of the collective mind growing larger. You're almost there, Tobias said. This is the right yard. Yes, I know. My scent is everywhere. This whole area smells of me. This is home. This is all mine. Rachel, this is all Chapman's. And Chapman belongs to Visser 3. Don't forget that. I trotted to the cat door. Chapman, Visser 3, big deal. I was a combination of Rachel and Fluffer. What did I care about Chapman and Visser 3? The light inside the house was bright. My eyes adjusted instantly. My nose picked up the smell of cat food, too dry and old to interest me. I also smelled my humans. Melissa, Mr. Chapman, and Miss Chapman. Don't ask me how I knew that what I smelled were those 3 people. I just knew. I spotted a cockroach in the dust balls in the dark beneath the refrigerator. No interest to me. Roaches made interesting scritchy noises sometimes, and they were fun to watch run, but they smelled wrong. They were not prey. Swift movements. Feet. Human feet. I didn't bother looking up. It was Miss Chapman. High-pitched sounds coming from the motor of the refrigerator. They were annoying. They were also the sounds of birds outside. They had a nest up under the eaves. Then the sound of Melissa's voice. Where was she? I didn't see her anywhere. The sound was muffled. I tried to focus. My ears moved to point toward the sound. It came from above me, above and far away. She was in her bedroom, that's where. I couldn't hear the words clearly, but I knew that she was muttering to herself. I trotted across the kitchen floor. I knew, as Rachel, I knew I should be afraid, but I couldn't be afraid. Everything here smelled like me. My scent glands had left their marks all over, on that door, on that cupboard, on that chair. It reassured me. The big dominant Tom Kell smack. Sorry. The big dominant tomcat smell was not in here. No, there were no other cats in here at all, only human smells, and those were not very important. I left the kitchen and paused at the corner between the hallway and the family room. Chapman was there, in the living room. I could smell him. He was just sitting on the couch. I glanced at him and walked on. But then I stopped. My human brain had sensed something wrong with the picture. Chapman was just sitting on the couch. No TV, no music. He wasn't reading a book or a newspaper. He was just sitting. I turned back to the kitchen. I looked up at Miss Chapman. She was doing something at the kitchen sink. Maybe watching dishes? No, she was cutting vegetables. But again, no TV, no music. She wasn't humming to herself. She wasn't talking to herself the way my mom does when she's working in the kitchen. Not right. Something was not right with either of the Chapmans. I went back to the hallway. There were stairs leading up to the bedrooms. From the hallway, I could hear Melissa more clearly. I concentrated. trying to ignore the fascinating sounds of the birds under the eaves. I focused on the human sounds of Melissa's voice. Divided by the square root of... No, wait. No. The square root times... Is that right? She was doing her homework. Her math homework, obviously. Like I should be doing, I thought. I had a pang of guilt. Instead of doing my homework, I was creeping around my friend's house, spying on her and her parents. I tried to find a clock. I had to watch the time. At 9:45, my 2 hours would be up. I wanted to be out of morph and back in my normal body long before then. Hopefully, I could still get home and do my math homework and at least do some of the reading for social studies class, too. I spotted a clock. It was over the mantel, between pictures of the Chapmans and Melissa. The clock said 3 minutes until 8. I had plenty of time. Sudden movement. Oh, just Chapman standing up. The cat part of me wasn't interested in Chapman one way or the other. But I forced myself to pay attention. It was important to watch him. That was why I was here. Is he prey? The cat brain seemed to be asking me. Yes. Yes, I told the cat brain. Chapman is our prey. Chapter 12. I followed Chapman as he headed down the hallway. Either he didn't notice me, or else he didn't care. He opened a door that let loose a flood of smells. Dampness, mildew, bugs. Rachel, how are you doing in there? I jerked in surprise, a very uncat-like movement. It was Tobias. He had to be fairly close for me to be able to hear his thought speech. He must be on the roof or perched on a nearby tree branch. I strained my sensitive cat hearing. The birds under the eaves were silent. They were afraid of the big hawk. I'm fine, I said, but you scared me half to death. Sorry, I was just worried. Well, don't worry. I'm following Chapman down to the basement. Why? Because that's where he's going. Duh. Somehow, Tobias's human words were annoying me. He wanted me to pay attention to him, and it was hard to do. The cat didn't care about his words. The cat just wanted to go down and look around the basement. Fortunately, that's what I wanted to do, too. I trotted down the rough wooden stairs after Chapman. Very weird, by the way. Going downstairs as a cat gave me a feeling of vertigo. I mean, I was going down head first. It's strange. Look, Tobias, I appreciate you looking out for me, but I'm kind of busy right now. I understand. I can't hear you very well anyway. You're getting farther away. Yeah, I'm going down. I waited. He said nothing. Tobias? I called. But there was no answer. We're still learning about thought speech. We know there are limits on how far it can be heard, but we aren't sure what those limits are. The basement had paneling all around. The ceiling was bare wood and full of spiders and other interesting things. No mice, though. Nothing that could be considered actual prey, but many things that might have been fun to chase. Chapman is the prey, I reminded myself. We are hunting Chapman. There was a sort of TV room with a pool table and some old chairs and a couch, but it was obvious that no one had used them for a long time. There were no human scents on them. There was dust everywhere, and I could hear that there were spiders inside the TV set. The only part of the basement that appeared to have been used was a path right across the floor. I smelled the scents that Chapman had tracked in there with his shoes. We walked in a straight line across the basement to a door. It was a simple, white-painted door. Chapman pulled a set of keys out of his pocket. He unlocked the white door. He opened it and stepped through. 5 feet beyond the white door was a second door. This one was made of gleaming steel. It looked like the door to a bank vault. Beside beside the steel door, there was a small 1 second. Beside the steel door, there was a small square white panel of light. Chapman pressed his hand against it. The steel door opened. It slid into the wall like the doors on Star Trek. I knew I had to go after him, but my human mind was afraid. And my cat mind just didn't see any reason why I should walk into that dark place. To both of us, it felt like a trap, like a place we couldn't get out of. But I had to. I had to go in there. That was the whole point of this spying trip. And Chapman was my prey. At the last second, just as the door swooshed shut, I bounded into the room. It was dark at first, not that it bothered me. Then Chapman turned on a low light. It was strange because I could actually see better in the dark than I could with the low light. There was a sort of desk set into the wall. It was gray steel and very unusual looking. There were more little light panels in various cheerful colors, and there was something that looked like a small but complicated spotlight. There was something that looked like a small but complicated spotlight hanging down from the ceiling. In front of the desk was a chair, a totally normal office-type chair. Chapman sat in it. He ran his hands over a blue panel. Then he looked at his watch. He sat patiently, waiting. For about a minute, nothing happened. I tried to look nonchalant, like I had just happened to wander in. But at the same time, I was careful to stay behind Chapman so he wouldn't see me. I remember Jake's warning about how anyone else would just assume I was a plain old cat. But Chapman knew about morphing. The Yeerks knew about the Andalite morphing technology. So if Chapman, or any other controller, ever saw an animal acting the wrong way, they could suspect the truth. Suddenly, a brilliant light snapped on. My cat eyes adjusted instantly, but even so, the light was painfully bright to look at. It came from the little spotlight thing. Chapman turned around in his chair to face the light. The light began to change. It took shape. It turned different colors. The 4 hooves appeared, the bluish fur, the many-fingered hands, the flat, intelligent face with no mouth and only slits for a nose, the penetrating, almond-shaped main eyes, then the strange extra eyes mounted on stalks that turned this way and that, looking around the room. Last came the tail, the wicked, curved, scorpion-like tail. An Andalite, just like the Andalite prince who had given us our powers. But I knew that this was no true Andalite. Dread washed over me. Dread too strong for even my cat brain to ignore. This was no true Andalite. This was the only Andalite body ever seized and taken over by the Yeerks. The only Andalite controller in all the galaxy. This was Visser III, leader of the Yeerk invasion force. The evil creature who could morph into monsters acquired from all over the universe. This was Visser III, the creature who had murdered the Andalite prince while we cowered in terror. This was Visser III, who had nearly killed us all in the hell of the Yeerk pool. Welcome, Visser, Chapman said in a very humble voice. Innis 226 of the Salpniar pool submits to you. May the Kandrona shine and strengthen you. And you, Innis 226, Visser III said. I was shocked to hear the Visser's voice. In his Andalite body, he had no mouth. Andalites communicate telepathically, the way I do when I'm in a morph. The second shock came from what they had said to each other. Innis 226. That had to be the name of the Yeerk slug who controlled Chapman. The cat part of my brain was busy with a different question. Was this apparition real? No. There was no scent at all, only light and shadows. It was a hologram, I knew. but it was a very convincing hologram. Visser 3 seemed almost solid. He looked around as though he could see from his holographic eyes. I prayed he wouldn't look at me. Report, Innes. Yes, Visser. Part of me just wanted to run. Even a hologram of Visser 3 makes your skin crawl. But now that he had figured out it wasn't real, the cat part of me was just bored. I realized why I could hear Visser 3. The hologram projector must not be able to transmit thought. The holographic projector must not be able to transmit thought speech. It translated it into regular speech through audio speakers. Is there progress on locating the Andalite bandits? No, Visser, nothing yet. I knew who he meant by Andalite bandits. That was us, the Animorphs. I want them found. I want them found now. Chapman jumped back in surprise at the Visser's command. I could smell fear on him. In a calmer tone, Visser 3 went on. This cannot go on, Innis 226. It cannot go on. The Council of 13 will hear of it. They will wonder why I reported to them that all the Andalite ships near this planet had been destroyed and all the Andalites killed. They will be suspicious, they will be angry. And when the Council of 13 is angry with me, I am angry with you. Chapman was quite literally quivering. I smelled human sweat, and I smelled something else, something not totally human. It was very faint. Was that the yerk itself I was smelling? Was I smelling the yerk slug in Chapman's head? It seemed impossible, but there was some strange smell, something. I concentrated all my cat mind on analyzing the smell. What is that? Chapman swiveled in his chair. I looked up and froze. Chapman was staring right at me. And worse, much worse, Visser 3's stalk eyes were focused on me too. It's called a cat, Chapman said nervously. An Earth species used as a pet. The humans keep them close and find comfort in them. Why is it in here? It belongs to the girl, the host's daughter. I see, Visser 3 said. Well, kill it. Kill it immediately. Chapter 13. Kill it. Kill it immediately. I wanted to run. I wanted to panic. But some strange combination of the cat's cunning and my own intelligence came together and saved me. I didn't so much as flick a whisker. If I had, I would have been dead. I knew that for a fact. If I'd reacted like I'd understood, they would have known for sure that I was no normal cat. Visser 3's hologram watched me closely. All 4 of his Andalite eyes were focused on me now, and behind that gentle Andalite expression, I could feel the razor-sharp focus of the powerful evil yerk. Chapman, too, was staring at me. He had the same look in his eyes that he had the same look in his eyes that he had when he caught someone trying to skip out of school. I was terrified, or at least the Rachel part of me was terrified. Fluffer couldn't have cared less. He sensed my concern, but he had none of his own. There were no birds of prey here. There were no dogs. There were no smells of dominant cats. There was only a sort of 3-dimensional picture that had no scent. And Chapman. Chapman might be prey, or he might not, but he was certainly no threat. It could be an Andalite, Visser 3 said. Destroy it. In response, I said, Visser 3 glared at me. What is that? It's the sound a cat makes, Visser. I believe it wishes to eat. Swat! Suddenly, without warning, Visser 3 whipped his tail at me. A dangerous foot-long scythe-shaped blade arced toward me at a speed no human could hope to evade. But I wasn't just a human. In a tenth of the time it took to blink, I had seen the sudden motion. And I was crouched down, ears back, teeth bares. My paw, claws out, stretched, swiped at the tail blade. My paw went straight through the hologram, and the blade, nothing but a projection. My paw went straight through the hologram, and the blade, nothing but a projection, swept through me. It took me a second to make sense of the sound. It was Visser 3 laughing. Chapman seemed amazed too, like he had never heard the Visser laugh. Like it wasn't even possible for him to have imagined the Visser laughing. What a ferocious little beast, Visser 3 said approvingly. See how he did not back away or run? I am many times his size, and yet he struck at me. A pity that species is too small to serve as a host. Yes, a pity, Chapman said warily. Kill it, Visser 3 said. What better form for an Andalite to use? Better kill it, just to be safe. Yes, Visser, Chapman said. Only what? The Visser snapped. It belongs to the girl. If I kill the animal, she will be angry. She may draw attention. Killing a cat is seen as a bad deed. It would violate my cover. Visser 3 did not look happy to be disobeyed, but he was not a creature who made impetuous decisions either. He considered for a moment while my future just hung there, balancing between life and death. Do not violate your cover or draw attention, the Visser said at last. I figured it was time for me to do something in my own defense. I walked over and rubbed my flank against Chapman's leg. What is it doing? Visser 3 demanded. It is signaling that it wishes to be fed. Interesting. Claws and teeth and ferocity mixed with the subtlety to manipulate creatures larger than itself. A worthy creature. Yes, let it live for now. Let it live until we have resolved the matter of the girl. Chapman's face actually seemed to twitch. It was the only emotion he had shown other than fear. The girl? But, Visser, the agreement with the human Chapman. Visser 3 sneered. Agreements. Don't be a fool. We make agreements to gain voluntary hosts. Agreements are a tool, just as you are my tool. If you had brought me the Andalite bandits, I would not have to concern myself with a cat or a girl. Chapman bowed his head. I will bring them to you. Do that, Visser 3 said coldly. And then the solid-seeming image began to change. The gentle Andalite body melted away, and in its place grew a monster like nothing ever seen on Earth. Where the Andalite had been, there was now a long, thick tube. There was an opening like some horrible mouth at the end of the tube. The thing was purple but translucent. You could almost see through it, although I wasn't sure if that was because it was a hologram or if the animal itself was that way. The hologram Visser lowered the tube mouth toward Chapman's head. The mouth opened, revealing hundreds, maybe thousands, of tiny suckers, each dripping slime. It seemed as if the tube mouth closed over Chapman's head. Chapman shook and quivered in terror. Visser 3's artificial voice said, Don't forget, Innis 226, I gave you this Chapman body. I placed you in his head because I trusted you. I fed you his brain and made you my lieutenant, but I can suck you back out again if you fail me. Would you like to see what happened to the last fool who failed me?" Suddenly, an image appeared in the air, like a little movie. It was a second hologram. It showed a human woman, pain-racked, screaming, with the purple creature sucking on her head. The real Chapman the real Chapman began to moan. "Oh, oh, no, Visser, I beg you." In the little movie, the translucent purple thing suddenly went into a spasm. From the woman's ear there came the slug. It was sucked, dripping, gray, slimy, right out of her head. The purple creature swallowed the yerk slug. Then the little movie ended. Not a very pretty picture, is it, Innis 226? Chapman just shook his head. His eyes were still staring at the empty air where the image had appeared. Visser 3 began to resume the Andalite form. "Don't fail me," Visser 3 said. Chapter 14. Suddenly, Visser 3 had vanished. The room was dark again. Chapman sat, hunched over the desk, with his head in his hands. It was a while before he opened the door, and we both went back up the stairs. Miss Chapman was there, waiting. "What are the Visser's orders?" she asked in a whisper. Chapman looked at her like he'd just seen a ghost. "He wants the Andalite bandits. He morphed into a Vanarx, a Yerk Bane." He kept his voice low, too. He glanced toward the stairs. I guess he was checking to see if Melissa was around. Miss Chapman shuddered. "I'd heard that he acquired a Vanarx. I always thought it was just another story to frighten his underlings. He showed me. He showed me how he destroyed Innis 174. Pardon me 1 second. There are a lot of weird words in this. He showed me. He showed me how he destroyed Innis 174. Miss Chapman looked shocked. He used a Vanarx on an Innis of the 2nd century? "That Andalite-controlling scum," Chapman said viciously. "I wish the Council of 13 would find out what kind of a mess he's making on this planet. Let them take that Andalite body away from him and throw him back in some distant pool on the home world." "Don't wish for that," Miss Chapman said grimly. "Long before Visser 3 loses power, he will surely have destroyed you for failing him." My cat ears noticed the sound before either of the Chapmans. Movement. Human feet pounding. I cocked my ears toward the stairs. "Hey, Mom? Dad? Can one of you help me with this math problem?" It was Melissa. She was halfway down the stairs. She stopped and glanced hopefully at her parents, or at least the people who had once been her parents. "We're busy right now, Melissa," Chapman snapped. "Besides, dear, you should do your own work. That's how you learn," Miss Chapman said. "If you still can't figure it out later, your father will help you." Melissa's face fell. She forced a smile, but there was no happiness there at all. "I guess you're right, Mom. It's just this square root stuff." She hesitated, like she was hoping her parents might change their minds and go back upstairs with her. Miss Chapman smiled. It was a smile as empty as Melissa's had been. "Square roots are hard to understand, aren't they? But I know you can do it." "I'll come up and check on you before you turn in, sweetheart," Mr. Chapman said. The words were all normal enough. I guess my own mom or dad could have said exactly the same things to me. Dear, sweetheart. But the way they said, there was something missing. Humanity. Love. Call it whatever you want. The words were right, but they were completely wrong. It was horrible. Horrible in a totally different way than the monsters we had fought in the Yerk pool. This was the kind of horrible that made you want to cry instead of scream. And suddenly, I found myself running after Melissa as she headed back upstairs. When I reached her bedroom, Melissa sat down on the bed and began sobbing. Rachel, can you hear me? Yes, Tobias, I'm out of the basement. I'm upstairs in Melissa's room. Thank goodness. I've been trying you every few minutes or so. I was worried you were trapped downstairs. No, I'm out. Good. You have more than an hour left, but Fluffer is trying to head home. Cassie and Jake and Marco are trying to capture him again, but you know better than anyone how wily he can be. Melissa flopped on her face on the bed. She pulled a pillow over the back of her head and just cried. I can't leave just yet, I said. Rachel, if the real Fluffer walks in while you're still there... Yeah, I know, but I still can't leave right now. I have something I have to do. I went over to the bed. As small as I was, the side of the bed looked like a wall. It could have been the side of a two-story building. I settled back on my haunches, gathering energy in my leg muscles. Then I sprang up, effortlessly, to land with perfect grace on the bed. I walked over to Melissa and sniffed her hair sticking out from under the pillow. I heard a sound coming from somewhere. It was a sound that reminded me of my mother. It reminded me of both my mothers, the human woman and the cat who had licked my fur and carried me around in her mouth. I recognized the sound. It was purring. I was purring. Melissa put her arm around me and drew me close. And the physical contact made me a little anxious. It made the cat in me want to leave. But then she started scratching my neck and behind my ears. I purred a little louder and decided to stay for a while. I don't know what I've done, Melissa said. It startled me to realize she was talking to me. Did she guess the truth? Did she know I was human? No. She was just a girl talking to her cat. I don't know what I did, Melissa repeated. Tell me, Fluffer McKitty, what did I do? Rachel, what are you doing in there? Tobias, I have plenty of time. You have less than an hour. Don't push your luck. Jake is practically having a fit out here. He's telling me to tell you to get out. Not yet. Melissa needs me. I had stopped purring, probably because I was preoccupied, arguing with Tobias. I started purring again. I felt Melissa needed me to purr. She was still crying, still scratching slowly behind my ears. What did I do, Fluffer? She asked again. Why don't they love me anymore? I felt like my own heart would break right then, because I knew now why Melissa had stopped hanging out with me. I knew why she had become so withdrawn, and I knew how little hope there was for her. My stomach turned and twisted. Next time Marco asked me why we were fighting the Yurts, I knew I would have a whole new answer. Because they destroy the love of parents for their daughter. Because they made Melissa Chapman cry in her bed with no one to comfort her but a cat. It was a small answer, I guess. I mean, it wasn't some high-sounding answer about the entire human race. It was just about this one girl, my friend, whose heart was broken because her parents were no longer really her parents. Look, Rachel, I told Jake what you said. He said to remind you that you have a job to do in there. You're not there to tell Jake to shut up, Tobias, I said angrily. I'll come out, just not yet. I purred as loud as I could. Melissa cried, and it came to me like a vision. All the children all over whose parents had been made into controllers, and the parents whose children had been taken whose children had been taken from them to be turned into controllers. It was a terrible image. I wondered how it must feel to see your parents stop loving you. After a while, Melissa fell asleep. I got up and padded down the stairs to the pet door. It was chilly outside. My friends were all waiting. They were also a little mad at me for making them wait and worry. You only have 10 minutes to spare, Rachel, Jake said. I hope it was worth scaring us all half to death. Did you at least discover something useful? Yes, I discovered plenty. I discovered that Chapman has a way to communicate directly with Visser 3. I discovered that Visser 3 is pretty hot to catch us, although he still thinks we're Andalites. And I decided something too. What? Cassie asked me. I decided that I don't care what it takes or how many risks I have to run. I don't care what happens to me. I hate these jerks. I hate them. I hate them. And I will find a way to stop them. Chapter 15. That night and the next morning, I barely got any homework done. In math class that day, I got the first C grade I'd gotten in a long time. My grades were starting to fall because I was busy trying to save the world, or at least to save my old friend. I knew now what had happened, why Melissa and I weren't friends anymore, at least not close friends. Something had gone terribly wrong in her life. Her parents no longer loved her. They pretended to. They sounded like they did. But Melissa knew it was all wrong. Every time I thought of it, I felt like my insides were burning up from the anger. I guess I knew a little bit about what she was feeling. When my parents got divorced, I worried that maybe that meant they didn't love me anymore. I was wrong. They still did. I don't see my dad as much as I would like to, but he does love me. My mom loves me. Even my sisters love me. Love is pretty important. It's like wearing a suit of armor. It makes you strong. On my way out of math class, Jake came sidling up next to me. Meeting later, okay? Yeah, whatever. Where at? The church tower, where we were the other day. Okay, but it's a long walk. He turned around to face me, walking backward and grinning. So don't walk, he said. He waved and headed off down the hall. 2 hours later, I was in the air. Let me tell you something. Getting that big eagle body off the ground isn't easy. It is definitely work. I wondered if my human body got any of the aerobic benefits of the exercise. Once I got clear of the ground, I was able to catch little gusts of wind to climb higher. But it wasn't until I made it above the trees and the school building that I started getting a good solid breeze that helped lift me up. When I finally got high enough, I spotted Tobias. His reddish tail feathers were like a beacon. Man, that was a workout, I said when I got close enough. Tell me about it. Follow me. The mall is an excellent place for thermals. The mall? Why the mall? It's all that parking space. See, the concrete gets hot in the sun. The concrete, the cars, the buildings themselves, they're all hot. So there's almost always a nice warm updraft. Flying is like the nicest thing in the world, I said dreamily. Yes, it is, Tobias agreed. One of the nicest things. But there are things you miss, too. Sitting back on the couch with a cold can of pop and a bag of chips and no school the next day and something good on TV, that's a good feeling, too. He didn't sound like he was feeling sorry for himself, just like he was mentioning something that happened to be true. There's the church tower. I see another bird heading toward it, and I think I see Cassie coming out of her morph. Down we go, Tobias said. 10 minutes later, I had morphed back into my human body. You know what we need, Marco said? We need to coordinate these morphine outfits. I mean, Cassie's wearing green patterned leggings and a purple stretch top, and Jake's got on those awful bike shorts, and Rachel is stylish, as always, in her black tights. Put it all together, and we look pretty scruffy. What do you want? Jake asked him. Sorry. What do you want? Jake asked him. You want us all to wear blue with a big number 4 on our chests and become the Fantastic Four? The Fantastic Four plus the Amazing Bird Boy, Tobias added. No way, Marco said. Not Fantastic Four. I'm thinking more an X-Men kind of thing. It's not about being identical, it's just about having some style. Right now, if anyone saw us, they wouldn't think, oh, cool, superheroes. They'd think, man, those people do not know how to dress themselves. Marco, I said, I think it's time to get over this fantasy of yours. We are not superheroes, and this is not a comic book. Yes, but I really, really want it to be a comic book. See, in a comic book, the heroes don't get killed. I mean, okay, they killed Superman that time, but it's only ever temporary. Can we deal with reality here? Jake asked. We have business to discuss. What's the matter with combining green and purple? Cassie asked Marco. It's a major fashion no-no, Marco said. Been reading Vogue again, Marco? I teased. Jake just put his hand over Marco's mouth. People, and I use the term loosely. We need to decide what we're doing next. Marco pried Jake's hand away. I want to decide what we're not doing next. I should be spending more time with my dad. You know, he's still messed up over my mom. Marco's voice always cracked whenever he mentioned his mom. He'd start out sounding tough and all, but his voice would end up with that little break, that little wobble. It had been 2 years since his mother disappeared. They say she drowned, although they never recovered her body. His father had fallen apart. It was the main reason Marco was so reluctant to be an Animorph. He was worried that if anything ever happened to him, his dad would just totally give up. I could see that Jake was about to say something impatient, and I was feeling the same way, like Marco just needed to deal with his reality. But Cassie put her hand on Marco's arm. Don't ever let any of this get in the way of spending time with your dad, she said earnestly. He needs you. We need you too, Marco, but your dad comes first. She looked at Jake, then at me. There isn't much point in doing any of this if we forget why we're doing it. I thought about Melissa, and I thought about my mom and dad, and how great it was to have them, even when they got on my nerves. Cassie's right. When you get home, tell your dad you love him, Marco. I blurted it out without overthinking it. It wasn't the kind of thing I'd normally say. Thank you, Dr. Rachel, Marco said. Thank you, Dr. Rachel, Marco said. He said it snidely, but I could see he knew what I was talking about. Then he was suddenly all business. He rubbed his hands together. Okay, let's get serious here. How are we going to go about getting ourselves killed next? Turn into flies at a frog convention? Morph into turkeys in time for Thanksgiving? I want to go back in, I said. Back into Chapman's. Why? Jake asked. We learned a lot already. We didn't learn the location of the Kandrona, I pointed out. That's what we need to do, sooner or later. The Andalite made it pretty clear to Tobias that Kandrona is the weak point for the Yeerks. The Kandrona sends out the rays that are concentrated in the Yeerk pools. If we destroy the Kandrona, we hurt them bad. Marco raised a skeptical eyebrow. Excuse me, Rachel, but what is a Kandrona? I mean, we know what it does, but what does it look like? How big is it? For all we know, the Kandrona could be the size of a lighter and be in Visser 3's pocket. That's not the impression I got from the Andalite, Tobias said. Whatever, Marco said impatiently. The point is, how do we destroy something when we don't even know what it is? That's why we have to follow the one lead we have, I said. Chapman. Chapman communicates with Visser 3. The two of them know where the Kandrona is. If I can spy on them, maybe I can figure it out. They were all staring at me. Marco looked at me like I was crazy. Jake looked thoughtful. Cassie looked worried, like she wasn't sure about what I was saying. Tobias turned his fierce, intimidating hawk stare on me. Are you sure you're going back to spy on Chapman? He asked me privately. I don't think you should go back in there alone, Jake said. How is anyone else going to go in with me? I asked. We can't have two cats running around. I mean, as Fluffer, I can go anywhere without any of them being suspicious. See, I hadn't told anyone about Visser 3 telling Chapman to kill me. I knew it was wrong to keep secrets like that from the group, but if I'd told them, they would have never let me go back in. Unfortunately, although Jake may not be all that perceptive, Cassie is. Are you sure nothing went wrong while you were in there, Rachel? Cassie asked me. She was looking at me with this kind of sideways look Cassie gets when she's trying to figure someone out. It was scary, I said, but nothing happened. It wasn't exactly a lie. Kind of a lie, but not exactly. Cassie thought for a moment. Her eyes went blank. Suddenly, I knew what was going on. Tobias was talking to her privately. He was telling her something. She nodded like she was agreeing. Tobias didn't know what had happened with Visser 3, but he did know that I was pretty freaky when I came back up out of that basement. I think we should find a way for someone to go along with Rachel, Cassie suggested. What are you going to do? Turn into a flea and ride on my back? I asked her. She smiled and gave a little shrug. I'm just saying we should think about it. Okay then, Jake said. Rachel goes in one more time. Maybe we got lucky. We haven't gotten lucky since we walked through that construction site and met our first alien, Marco said. Maybe that's going to change, I said. I'm going in, and I'm finding a way to hurt those creeps. That's not the only reason you're going back in there, Tobias said in my head. You're not just doing it to hurt the Yerks. You're going back in there because you want to help Melissa. Same thing, I said. I guess the others wondered who I was talking to. Okay, that takes us just past 8 o'clock. Do you feel like one more... Oh, no, you have to go after this chapter. Okay. Please do call Mama Rat and tell Leslie we miss chatting with her on a weekly basis. But hello. Yes, and my Matt is hungry and insists on being fed. So... Okay, well, thank you for joining me. And, oh yeah, I guess I probably won't be able to do this the next couple of Thursdays. I also don't know, like, exactly where I will be at exactly which time zone the next couple of Thursdays. So, you know, I'll keep you posted. But good night for now.